Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Vision radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV listeners, as well as any other people who are hearing this on YouTube, etc. My name is Jerome, and I am the Sane Environmentalist. And this is it. This is our last show of 2017. And with that said, this has been one heck of a year, hasn't it? With the fires going on. And speaking of that, the radiation levels in and around Los Angeles are extremely high right now. The gross gamma count is up to 600 counts per minute. And when you think of that, that would be like sitting there with your Geiger counter and it would be going click, 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 click 600 times a minute. That is highly radioactive. So if you're in Los Angeles and you have a dust mask, wear it to keep some of the soot from these fires from getting into your body. Today, this is kind of a special show because it is the end of the year show. And Lonnie and I have decided that we're going to work together on this one. And are you there, Lonnie?
I am, Jerome. Thank you for inviting me to be with you on the last day of the year. I really appreciate it. And I have to say, I want to thank you for joining me and being my co-host on this show. You've added, I think you've been a great addition to the Age of Fission. You have a really different perspective, and your interviews are awesome. I'm really glad that I asked you to be with us.
And thank you. And I'm just delighted to have another place to express my voice. You know, if you're going to be an activist, you have to get your voice out and get it heard to as many people as possible. So this is a giant thing for me as far as my ability to do my job, you know, and I consider my job the education and enlightenment of people, you know, not only of the problems, but as well try to find solutions. You know, that is, in my opinion, what sane environmentalism is about, is not screaming and yelling about how terrible everything is all the time, but pointing out things and pointing out solutions to those things, if there are solutions to those things.
Well, I don't know. It's like what you did at the beginning of the show. There may not be solutions, but there are ways for us to protect ourselves. And so what we do is remind people that there are ways to protect yourselves. And there are easy things that we can do, like put on a mask if you're living in the LA area because the fires are still ongoing.
Yeah, and all of that cesium got deposited from Fukushima right into the plant material, which is now burning.
Yeah.
And,
well, not just Fukushima, but they had the very first nuclear meltdown was in Los Angeles, and so it spread all over that area. So it's there's radioactivity, not just, and from the 50s they bombed the daylights out of the Pacific Ocean. So there was, what was it called? What's the name of that big gigantic bomb? I always forget the name
Trinity?
of it. Maybe that was it, but it was
Trinity was the first one.
It was the very biggest bomb, and it basically blew up so much smoke that even here in the Northwest, whole car lots had to trash their cars because they got so much radioactive contamination on them. It went everywhere. Yes, it was really bad. It went all over. In fact, the children of Los Angeles had high rates of polio and high rates of really first things that happen when you're exposed to radioactivity, to the point where the milk was highly contaminated all over. And that's when JFK said, we're going to cut back the nuclear industry. And of course, a few months later, he was dead. But his intention was to shut down the nuclear industry because of the radioactive fallout from what they had been doing.
Absolutely.
So it's
and yeah, so that, and the radiation doesn't go away. I think many people are probably like, from the 50s. It's like, yeah, radio cesium-137 from the 1950s is just as deadly today as it was in the 1950s.
That's right. That's right.
And iodine, there's certain ones that stick around for a long time.
Well, this is the thing. I think we're all having this come to Jesus moment about. It's not. It is radioactivity, but there's also a lot of chemical compounds and pollution that goes along with it. I mean, it's so beyond comprehension, the level of complete disregard for human life. This is why I think most people shut down, because they just can't imagine that people in power would be willing to do this to everyone on the planet, because you can't see, taste, or feel it. Like the water contamination, you don't taste the chemicals in your water. Actually, this is a weird thing. Do you know what they put in chlorine in our water, basically, to cleanse the water? They filter it out as much as they can. But in the United States, we still only regulate 60 chemicals in the water, not their hundreds of thousands of different kinds of compounds mixing those 60 chemicals are with all the other God knows. I mean, every American mother tested for their breast milk came positive for, flame retardant. Every American mother. So we have really, one of the things that the Trump administration is touting right now is that they have passed more regulation. They have done more, more legislation and blah, blah, blah. He was touting himself in a big fat lie. What they have done is unprecedentedly rolled back regulations. And in this tax scam, they opened up ANWR. ANWR is an acronym for Alaska National Water Reserve. And it is...
No, I think it's Wildlife Refuge.
Wildlife Reservation. Thank you. This is why I love you, because you remember these details. And it is almost 1.293 million acres for oil exploration it's about an eighth of Alaska. They have been after it for over 40 years, and now they just handed it to them on a silver platter in what was considered a tax bill. How it was related, I have no idea, but it was related.
Yeah, well, they just tack that stuff on, and that is, and the ironic thing there is they wouldn't be trying to drill in that place, which is hard to get to. Okay, don't think that setting up a drilling operation and a harvesting operation in the North Woods of Alaska is an easy thing. It's very expensive. It's very hard, and very dangerous from a liability standpoint. So it's not like the oil companies are like, yay, we get to go kill this area now. It's like we have a demand for oil, and in order to meet that demand, we'll go wherever we have to because it's profitable.
I'm going to tell you, we don't have a demand for oil.
We allow that.
I'm going to tell you, we don't have the demand. We don't have a demand for that oil. We've been fracking up the United States. They're doing it because they can make money. That's the reason, because they can make money, and they're going because they know once Trader Trump gets impeached or is thrown out of office, there's nobody they're going to pass this. So they're going for the gold. They're digging in as hard as they can and doing every single offensive thing they can to the American people. I mean, honestly, these people are batterers. I get excited because, honestly, this is assault on our country that's happening right now, and it's not. It is just it's par for the course, though, because I think what it really has highlighted is that the military runs our government. We have literally had a military coup. This is why he feels comfortable surrounding himself with military people around him, because might as well let them be out in the open about what they're doing. I mean, right now, he's not even overseeing the troops. Against the Constitution, he has abdicated that role. He lets the military take on anything they want. As long as they report to him, he makes no input on it. And you know why? This is what a scoundrel he is, because then when those 4 soldiers that died or the 8 soldiers that died last week, he can say, well, it's not my fault. I trusted them and they let me down. I have no good words to say about this guy, to be honest. Can you tell?
No, I would have thought that, yes.
Well, I'm going to tell you what. I am going to be on the streets on January 20th. I'm going to be on the streets with my signs talking about we have to impeach the lying cabinet, the lying vice president, the lying president. We have to impeach him. And there are going to be lots of people on the streets on January 20th. And there is a huge movement growing. Good. So it's going to happen. That's
good. Hopefully it's not one of those out of the frying pan into the fire things,
Well, it seems to be that way, but that's how batterers do. They like to set you up to make you think that, well, if you leave me, then it's going to be way worse. Well, how bad? It's already bad. It's already as bad as it is. The sad part in American politics is there's really no one. How do you overcome the fact that the military took over our government in World War II and made all these programs secret so that they have poisoned our waters, poisoned our air, and the politicians are in this awkward place of going, well, we've been lying for so long, how do we unlie? And then if you dare to unlie, like Senator Paul, what's his name, Wellstone, him and his family got blown up in a car. They went to Florida to talk to the victims of 9/11 after he, participated in the 9/11 report and said, this isn't right. I'm going to go find out what really happened. On his way back, he and his wife and his children all got killed in a mysterious plane accident. All of the people
really?
Yes, all of the maintenance people in the building all died mysterious deaths. I mean, the military we're pretending as if, unless we get masses of people in the street to make these people, and I'm not one to call for off with their heads. I really believe we need to have a reconciliation like the people in Rwanda did when they were coming out of that era of having their neighbors being chopped up with machetes. They had to come to a point where they said, look, we can't kill everybody that harmed us. There'd be more than half the population would be dead. People do weird things in war. They lose their humanity in war. So we have to move from a place of reconciliation and peace. That's what I think America needs to do. We need to demand Americans first. That's a first step. Because every treaty that our government has ever signed with Native Americans has been broken. Every one, to this day, every one. And in fact, I forget the gentleman that I was listening to. He was an activist. He said if you sign up on the rolls to sign up on the reservation, when you read the agreement that you have with the government, they actually are still considered prisoners of war.
Really?
Yeah. Now, I haven't read their treaties, but this is what he was saying. And when he really read it, he started to realize, like, wow, I signed up my kids to be prisoners of war. He found this out when he went to Standing Rock because he had gotten arrested. And he's like, I realized, like, that was another hurdle that a lot of these people have to overcome. So, and let's just talk reality. You know, this year has been the whole Me Too movement, right? So of women speaking out and people speaking out about sexual harassment and people using power over them. But at no point did the Democrats or the Republicans start talking about ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment. You know what I mean? Like, women still, it's been passed. It got passed in the government a long time ago, but it's never been ratified. So the Equal Rights Act has never been ratified in this country. So women really do not have equal rights, which is why sexual harassment is considered.
Explain to me what you mean by it's been voted on but not ratified.
When you pass an amendment, it has to be like, okay, so you know how the tax bill was passed in both houses? They have to actually accept it as law. So you can pass and say, yes, we all agree with it, but it has to be passed as law. And that's the ratification process.
And what, does the president have to sign it or something?
I believe so, yes. And that has never happened.
So a bill does not become law until the president puts a signature on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, this is the interesting thing. But is there any conversation about bringing that up? No. And to be honest, I brought it up to them, you know, when this first started, when they got rid of Al Franken, I was fuming. They got rid of Al Franken because they made him the poster boy because he's from the movie industry. They got rid of Al Franken to make him the poster boy because he was getting too much power inside the Democratic Party. He was becoming too much of a Democratic darling, and there was no way the establishment Democrats, this is my personal opinion, wanted him to be at the center, because he was moving forward. He wrote really good legislation about helping women protect their rights. He was moving forward with some strong legislation that has now gotten buried. So, you know, in our country right now, there's this whole conversation about Vladimir Putin is, you know, he just kicked off his next biggest competitor, and his presidency, while they say they're a democracy, it's a big sham. It's really an oligarchy. They're starting to throw around these political science words and kind of confusing people, like what's a democracy, what's an oligarchy, right? Well, in our country,
right.
What do we, in fact, when I was in class, I think I shared this. When I was in class, my comparative politics class, this was the whole lesson. What makes a democracy, what makes an oligarchy, what makes an authoritarian regime. And I said, well, what about the United States? She's like, well, what do you mean? It's a democracy. And I'm like, well, what about the School of Americas? She's like, well, what's that? I was floored. A professor at the University of Oregon did not know what the School of Americas is, which is a school where it started like in 1947. I'll look it up on the internet right now, but it basically is a school. They said it's military training, but how to elicit the truth from people. And to the point where there was a Catholic organization who basically was always protesting them. So they had to rename their school because there were so many people that knew about them. They were going under the auspices. Nobody knew what they were. Had you heard of the School of Americas?
No, actually, it seems like I have, but not in the context that you're speaking of. That's for sure.
Well, every single dictator, they renamed it. Let me go to the Wikipedia page, and I'll tell you. They renamed it the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Operation. Now, these are the these are the people who graduated, right? They have had lots of graduates from this School of America. And there's a School of America watch that has gone out there and protested every single year since it's been open. They've had all kinds of public protests and demonstrations. So some of the dictators that we do know about, the people who would know about them, let's see, Idi Amin went there. What was his other name? The guy from Guatemala, the big horrible dictator in Guatemala, went there. The one that they arrested from Panama, remember the guy that they arrested in Panama? He went there. Yeah. I mean, they basically have taught. Mugabe went there. They teach people how to torture. And she was like, "Well, I'd never heard of that."
Dictator Training Academy.
Pretty much. I mean, the way they call it, what they call it is that, I mean, it's been on the Democratic Party platform to close this school for a long time. They have been calling, the Democrats have been calling for it to be closed for a long time. But it's basically sort of called the School of Assassins, to be honest. They teach people how to murder people and how to torture people, and it's been really an eyesore. It is what year did it start? It started right after when all these secrecies, everything, 1946. That's when it started. And that's when they, like the Manhattan Project went into, private. They never ended the Manhattan Project. I read this morning there's a secret, I think it's called RDT, the biggest poison that was ever created. That was a secret program started in World War II that never ended because they wanted to build up their arsenal. Now they've found that this chemical has poisoned most of the water in all of Utah, large Mapleton, Utah, and they knew years before. I mean, we're waking up to what has happened to America in the last 100 years, essentially.
Yeah, well, I would say since, you're right, since about 1945 is when everything changed. When we got to the age of fission.
That's right, when the military took over.
Everything changed. Yeah.
But you know what, there's things we can do, and we can do it. Like, you can add supplements to your body. You can wear a face mask. I mean, there's protective things that we can do in terms of our own health and well-being. Exercise is very important. We need to everybody needs to. I mean, these are common things that people put off, but it's kind of like you don't put off going to the doctor when you have cancer. Like, why wait till you get cancer to take care of your body? Like, do it proactively, and you won't have to go to the doctor. I mean,
and as well, do things like make sure your thyroid is fully stocked with good stuff instead of radioactive stuff by taking supplements, and as well keep your potassium levels high and your iodine levels high so that your body can't absorb the radioactive versions of those things.
High levels of vitamin C. I mean, we can easily be taking C. High levels, like at minimum, you can take a minimum of 5,000 a day, easy. Most people people have a much higher need, 10, 15, 20,000. When you get sick, you can take very high levels. And also I really recommend that people learn EFT and start doing tapping. I know my life transformed when I learned that technique. It's a new technique. It helps you shake off the negative programming. It helps you shake off the brainwashing. I think it helps I don't know if there's been studies, but I believe that for myself, I think it helps shake off the EMTs, the electromagnetic transmissions that come across. I mean, we're being bombarded from all sides. And in fact, aren't they going to be releasing that 5G telephone or 6G telephone, something like that, that's going to have mega... Do you know about that?
Yeah, 5G is getting ready to come out.
Isn't that like super bad for you?
And that is yet another microwave type transmission.
That's another thing. Get rid of your microwave in your house. Don't use a microwave.
Well, most microwaves are pretty well shielded, and a newer microwave doesn't really lose that much in the way of microwave energy.
Yeah, but it does
You
kill
know,
all the
a
vitamins in
smart
your
meter,
food.
on the other hand, or a Bluetooth device or a cell phone or a wireless router, you know, working up in that high gigahertz range will. I mean, did you know that if you walked up to a cell tower and got in front of the antenna, you would literally burn from it?
No.
Yeah. Cell phone towers produce, I mean, that's why they have signs warning, caution, do not come around this, because if you stood in front of a cell phone antenna, a transmitting antenna, receiving antenna, you would fry. It would fry you just the same as a microwave, because that's how much energy is coming out of those things, and it's at a high enough frequency to where it vibrates the molecules in your body, creates heat. So yeah, you know, we are surrounded by things. Smart. I'm looking right at a smart meter right now, you know, and the smart meter puts out up to 2 watts of power. You know, and that may not seem like much. Well, what's 2 watts? That's nothing. 2 watts of microwave energy. If you had 2 watts of microwave energy leaking out of your microwave, you would definitely get a new microwave.
Well, I know that they make these little...
Yeah, we are surrounded.
This is the thing. They make these little buttons. What are they called? Microwave... you know those... They make these little buttons that absorb the EMTs. Do you know what is that what they're called, EMTs?
Electromagnetic pulse is what EMP stands for. It would probably be EMF, electromagnetic frequencies.
Okay.
Or VH, EMF, very high electromagnetic frequencies, because like a 60 hertz electromagnetic frequency it'll just go right through you like a wave. You know, when you get up to the megahertz and gigahertz boundaries, then it's moving fast enough, it's vibrating fast enough to when it goes through you, instead of a thump, it's like brrr. And so that creates a lot more friction per time unit, because it does literally move the electrons and stuff around in your atoms. You know, a lot of people don't realize that when a radio wave goes through you, it literally propagates through you. It doesn't just like go through you the way like air or something. It literally, you carry the charge from one side of your body to the other, and then transmit it on the other side.
I know they have these little protectors. They have EMF protectors. I bought some, and my phone used to be very hot. When I put 2 of them on the back of my phone underneath my case carrier, the phone stopped being as hot. I don't think it kills all the EMFs, but I have invested in some of those things. And one of the things I'm curious about is how long they last. But I heard this woman who was very affected by them. She had them, and that's what made me decide to buy it, was that she was saying that she was listless and sick all the time. And as soon as she put these EMF protectors around her office and on every one of her devices, her energy level went back up. Again, this is what I mean. But of course, all these things cost money. It's an investment. So we're sort of stuck between, I mean, in an effort to give people hope, there are answers, but it really does require for us to be clever about it, because we're swimming upstream.
And proactive.
Yeah.
Proactive.
Yeah.
Like, I've been doing quite a bit of study, research, and documentation on persistent contrails in the last week or two. You know, and on one day, literally, they turned it from a clear blue sky to a hazy day, where you couldn't even see the sun. Welcome to Oregon. And that's our story every day. I saw it happen. I documented it, and I was amazed. I'm like, this, you know, there's no way that could be a regular contrail. That's not the way it was when I was a kid. And so somebody left a comment on one of the videos, and they were like, that is actually a contrail, and they do sometimes stick around like that, and which got my curiosity up, and so I went and I did my own investigations, and indeed, contrails have been known for years and years to be able to create large cloud formations. And those cloud formations block out quite a lot of sun, and can even, like the other day, for instance, completely cloud the sky over so you can't even see the sun. And what this does is it removes the variability in the temperature on the surface. Like forget where the study was done, but there was like 1.8 degrees variance between day and night, temperature-wise, on the average. And then when there was and on 9/11, when they shut down all air activity for like 3 or 4 days, and the skies were completely clear, then it went up to 1.9. So it actually went up 1/10 of a degree, temperature-wise, from lack of contrails, variability of temperature.
How long have they been doing this?
And so, well, as long as they've been flying planes, jet planes at high altitudes.
Now you're talking contrails. You're not talking the geoengineered chemical trails.
No, I'm talking contrails, and indeed, contrails themselves can create very big, real geothermal issues on the surface. And so maybe if people, and I try to be the solution guy, me, and maybe if people were to go, well, I can either fly, which is convenient and takes 2 hours, or I can take a bus, which is less convenient and takes 2 days. I'll be emitting the same net amount of pollution as I would on a plane. However, it won't be creating these clouds in the sky. Or
people maybe ought not to just travel.
I won't be responsible.
I mean, that's the thing. Like a lot, I'm very personally very much against the tourist industry. I think that they're an offense to the planet on many, many levels. That being one. A lot of the travel is completely unnecessary. If you're asking me, would I get on a bus?
So cheap.
We could set up trains. You know what I mean? We could have these really great trains. This whole, the accident that happened in Washington was on an initial run of a new type of train. I personally don't think it was an accident that their safety features were left off in that initial run. Because if the safety features had been on, the accident wouldn't have happened. But now the conversation is going to be about, well, are trains really an effective way to go in the United States? And who needs to own them? And it's almost like the way they do things is to basically get us to build our own prisons. We basically agree to all of it. And for 2018, I think 18 has to be the year of accountability and for us to step up to the plate. Stop being stupid. You know what I mean? Do our own research and come at it with a sense of humanity. I feel very strongly that we cannot be attacking people who are Trump supporters because they're just gaslit. They have bought the Kool-Aid, just like the same people that are behind Hillary Clinton and think Hillary Clinton is a decent human being. What we have seen, the curtains have been pulled back, and we have seen that they're all in it at a dirty level. We really have basically the mafia running our government. And how do we get out of that?
And we don't have a representative democracy because this last election was definitely hacked and stolen.
Yep, from the very beginning. I've said this on this radio show. I don't know if you've heard it, but I really believe that the Democrats contacted the Russians to help them rig their primary. And then when the Russians figured out how to do that, they backdoored it and said, okay, let's get in the people that we want to get in. And they did hack several key elections, not just at the presidential election, but in lots of congressional districts. So it's an interesting thing what's happening here. But I think that politics, after having spoken with Guy McPherson and talking to Carl Grossman, who is very hopeful about everything still, but I think that there are environmental collapse is probably the most urgent thing that we have got going on our planet. It's a very serious issue. We cannot keep. This is why, to me, ANWR was the biggest offense of the tax scam bill. I mean, we have known for a long time they've been trying to go after the New Deal since it was written, and that's really essentially what this was. This was the Kill the New Deal Act. Worse than that, though, they opened up ANWR, and it hasn't even been a year where they put their pipelines in at Standing Rock, and they've already spilled 200,000 gallons of oil, at least.
Yeah. And that's just in one section. They're thinking that what happened there was the pipe broke because it had an imperfection in it from a device that was put on top of it to hold it down in the event that it flooded, so it didn't float. They actually weighted them down with these big, heavy things to keep them from floating in the event that they flooded. And those things created a divot or a puncture or a small wound in the outer skin of the tank of the pipe, and then the whole thing weakened at that point and blew out. And so there's literally hundreds of those spots all up and down the pipeline where those devices were used. And in the future we'll see more of those types of leaks out of that pipe. That's just the way it is.
Wow.
Anytime we go below the skin and pull shit out and don't use the resources that are on top of the apple skin. Think of the earth as an apple and the biosphere as the skin. And as long as you're using things within the skin, the cycle remains okay. It's when you go down under the skin and dig things up and pull them out and expose them to the upper area that you become imbalanced. And when you become imbalanced, things don't do well and many things will die. If you consider our ecosystem as thin as the skin on an apple and how easily damaged that is, you wouldn't we wouldn't think, where life is so tough and life will find a way. And it's like, life is very fragile. I could go through this area with a bulldozer and scoop out 4 inches everywhere, and it would be a barren wasteland. And the same with where you live. It's green and lush in Washington State, but if you went 4 inches below the surface and scraped it all away, you'd have a barren wasteland. So that is the fragility. We don't understand just how fragile it is. The ecosystem that we live in is super fragile, and it's diverse. And I think the diversity of it makes people believe that it's tough. But just because something's diverse does not mean it's not fragile as well.
Well, we're definitely in the 6th greatest extinction on the planet. And actually, the studies have shown that mammals are dying at a faster rate than in any other previous extinction. So,
yeah, and sea life as well is going at a faster rate.
Yeah.
It's very, very possible that we're already over the edge.
Well, that's what Guy McPherson says.
The median.
That's what Guy says.
It's just a matter of time before it all works itself out.
I mean, actually, if you listen to Guy McPherson, when he was on our show and he said, he thinks life is going to be humans will not be extinct by 2028 or 2029. That's like, what, 10 years from now? I mean, seriously?
Yeah, we're not going to be extinct by then. That's not logical.
Well,
I don't know. Or sane. There's too many of us, and we're in too many different places.
I don't know if the water is all really bad. I mean, the thing is, we don't really understand how the ecosystem is actually really falling apart. I mean, but I think his theory is based on the idea of we can't go above the 1% centigrade, which we're already above. Like when McKibben says we can't go above 2.5, he considers that, Guy McPherson considers that to be optimistic. But I mean, if you look at a friend of mine follows the Arctic ice melting, and it's actually the Arctic ice. There's a really good documentary on YouTube called the Arctic. It's called the Arctic Death Spiral. Oh my gosh, I apologize. The Arctic Death Spiral. It's called The Methane Time Bomb and the Arctic Death Spiral. And if you watch it, it's about an hour and 10 or 12 minutes. It's a compilation of all these scientists who have been studying the leaking methane. And at one point in this movie, a Russian scientist, tears come to her eyes when somebody asked her, "What does this mean?" She said, "It doesn't look good." Just put it to you that way. I mean, things are happening so fast beyond around our it's kind of like radioactivity. You don't really feel it. You don't really see it. You don't really understand that you're being poisoned. And then you get your, you start feeling sick and you go to the doctor and you get the diagnosis, well, you've got cancer. And there's not really much you can do about it except attempt to extend your life out. When you have brain cancer, yep, there's really no solution to brain cancer, which, many people in St. Louis are suffering from. This is one of the big killers in St. Louis is brain cancer. So it's an outrage,
Well, and I have this theory about cancer and humanity, and I think that cancer is, in a way, our only natural population control, and it is a direct result of overpopulation, because there wouldn't be the chemical pollution at the levels it is unless there was more people that were consuming more products that were creating the pollution.
Well, Jerome, I could not disagree with you 100% more. I could not disagree with you more on that.
I think that we have no predator, and in any population, I think, of any kind of being, human or animal, once you get to an overpopulated state, then you're going to see a higher incidence of cancer. And people will,
I think that the cancer that we have is directly caused. The overpopulation, the cancers that we have is all directly 100% caused by, I think that the cancer is 100% caused by the chemical and nuclear industry and the industrial military complex taking over the world. The predator that humans have is humanity, or the military.
Exactly.
The military is our own predators. Humans are their own predators. Right, so
exactly,
we're the only species that one of the few that kills each other to death. We fight to the death. Very few do, but this thing about the reason we have cancer is directly related. We have autism in the United States because of the vaccines, because the vaccine industry is giving children autism before vaccines came on the scene.
So, and answer me this, dear. And I'm not arguing your point, but answer me this. Why do they want to give children, what is their reason for giving children vaccines that they're letting the public know about?
It's pure greed. It's pure greed.
No, there's a reason, and the reason is because you're trying to say, keep your children healthy.
No.
Okay, that is the line that they're using.
That's the line, but the CDC has suppressed information. The CDC has intentionally destroyed studies and documentation that shows that the vaccines we give our children are not safe. If a young boy watch facts.
Oh, I'm not disputing that.
But I think what they're doing is trying to cull the population. You want me to tell you what I think? I think they're trying to exterminate just like Hitler wanted to exterminate the Jews. Those same people infiltrated the United States military, and their program is spot on to exterminating people, and they're doing it. They made the commitment 50 years ago, and that is in fact why no one can talk about it. We're not allowed to talk about radioactivity. We're not allowed to talk about the harm that vaccines cause. We're not allowed to talk. I mean, even GMOs. I read an op-ed in, I think it was the Washington Post this morning. The guy was saying it's immoral not to embrace GMOs, when we know that GMOs cause genetic mutation and really death and sterility down the line.
Yeah, agreed, absolutely. But what I'm trying to do is get your head out of that space that you're in and just try to look at it from a logical, let's say if you were an outsider looking in and you had no connection with anything, you would say, okay, well, I can see these creatures are evolved beyond the rest of the planet, and so they need certain things. And one of the things that they need is a guarantee of longer life and security. And so they're going to, of course, everybody, when vaccines first came out, everybody was like, yay, a cure for polio, a cure for the flu, a cure for this, a cure for that. Yay, we don't have to suffer from these diseases. Now we can live longer. Okay, and humanity, just by virtue of its existence, needs to create these poisons which are killing us and giving us cancer. And the more people, the more humanity you have, the more poisons are going to have to be created in order to meet the needs, whether they be delusional or not, of the people. And so we are, and so if you had way, way, way fewer people, if we only had one person per square mile versus 10 or 11 people per square mile in this country, you wouldn't need as many power plants. You wouldn't need as many cars and as much plastic and as many vaccines, and there wouldn't be as many diseases. Okay, so in a way,
I could not disagree with you more on this. The reason the population has look, we don't need the power. We actually, this whole thing this is a false premise that life is better if you become a very old person, that we all need to live to be old people. We do not respect death in our country. That we do not respect birth in our country. We prevent people from controlling how many babies they have. They're not pro-life, they're pro-birth. They could care less the level of depravity. Look at what has happened in Africa. The reason that they have an explosion of birth over there is because our country is preventing very well-known, easily accessible birth control. Because if they mention the word abortion, if your country allows abortion, you do not get to have aid. So it's a manipulation. This is a manipulation by the oligarchs, by the very few, to control the populations. The reason we have the chemicals and pesticides is because they wanted to. They did not John Goffman fought tooth and nail. He lost his career in the nuclear industry. He fought tooth and nail against the nuclear industry. Every scientist that I've ever, there are scientists in every offensive industry who have been, so why are they called whistleblowers when they're just telling the truth? Think of that. So this is not about the people, their overpopulation is pushing this because we have so many people. It's because it's a destruction of things as we know it for pure and simple greed. That's what it's about. We are seeing greed. We are literally eating off our own arms. They are eating off their own arms. They're like, what was that big fat thing in the Star Wars movie? The big disgusting, gross, fat thing, Chewbacca. Wasn't Chewbacca? What was his name?
Oh, Jabba the Hutt?
Yeah, that's literally what this is about. It has no regard. It lacks humanity completely. And, what did they do when they came to the United States? They dehumanized people. I mean, people need to be listening to the stories of the slaves and to the Native Americans, what they've done across the board. The Europeans across the board have had no regard for human life for at least the last 1,000 years. Now, David Icke thinks it's because there are aliens working, like outsiders, that they're an alien force and an alien race, and that there's aliens that want to harm humanity, some that don't, and some that do, and, that whole reptilian idea. I used to think that was way off the charts crazy, but it kind of makes logical. There has to be some answer to this because it doesn't make sense.
Well, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And greed is basically they're pulling money out of the little guy and get into theirs.
Well, so what's your plans for 2000? We have about 10 minutes left. What's your plans for 2018? Like, how do you plan on, do you have any ideas of self-improvement or making things work or connecting stronger with people?
Yes, I actually do. I'm going to be moving to Eugene, Oregon.
You are, yay!
And yes, so I will be in Eugene, Oregon, probably in April.
Awesome. I'll have a cohort
And I will
here.
set up residence there. And then I'm going to, the plan is to try to, on the ground, start organizing people. Getting people involved on the ground, create as many other sane environmentalists as I can.
That'd be awesome.
And,
We'll hook you up with
and
KEBW. Because those are people doing the same. Rick Gold has been doing
there.
that. I mean, if we could make this a force to be reckoned with,
I would like to focus on trying to come up with a program to help encourage people to install even one solar panel on their roof, just all across America. Come up with a way, I don't know, maybe a Indiegogo, something where we could create an impetus for people just start with one solar panel. Just get people thinking in the mindset of that, and then they see the value of it, and they go, well, let's get another one then. And before you know it, their whole roof is covered with solar panels, and their neighbor's whole roof is covered with solar panels. And the more houses you can get off the grid, the better. I think that is one of our biggest things right now is the production of electricity in order to run our lives, and get more people in electric cars, get away from burning gasoline. The only reason I was thinking about this the other day, they came up with gasoline probably as a byproduct from diesel. Okay, because they're making diesel because that's the main fuel.
Well, let's be clear. Again, it's about profit.
And then they end up with this gasoline stuff, and they're like, well, this is too volatile to burn in a truck, and it doesn't have a high enough energy level. And then Henry Ford's like, well, I can probably figure out the way to make an automobile run on it. And then, well, okay, because it probably was junk for them.
Look, let's be clear.
In the middle of
there were automobiles that were designed that ran on water. That was suppressed.
I've not seen that. I'd have to see proof of that.
They suppressed it. There has been, and they were bought out. There were ideas that they bought out and suppressed. Just like sound energy with Sherry Edwards. Sherry Edwards is a person who discovered a pattern so that you can cure most people's ills with sound energy. That was actually suppressed also. She submitted to the United States for a patent, and it was stolen from her inside the patent office. I mean, there are things that we can do that we haven't even heard of that sound outrageous. But the reason they sound outrageous is we've been brainwashed to believe that there are no solutions. And there are solutions.
Well, I understand the laws of thermodynamics. And I understand that, yes, water has hydrogen in it, a lot of hydrogen in it. And the byproduct would be oxygen. So I could see how if you could get the hydrogen out of water through some sort of electrolysis or something, yeah, you could burn that in an engine, and you could run a car on it. But you've got to have something to create the hydrolysis. You've got to have some high energy source to break that water molecule down and create the hydrogen. And then another method for extracting the hydrogen from the oxygen.
Well, I don't remember the details. Oxygen. I do know that this was something I read about 10, 15 years ago. So it was a big thing in my head when I started first waking up.
But the bottom line is we need to get people off of burning dinosaurs.
Exactly.
Burning things that come from underneath the skin of the apple and start using stuff that's produced above the skin of the apple. One 10,000 square mile solar array in Arizona could harvest enough energy to keep the entire country going.
Wow. Well, I have to say, Jerome, as the hour ends, I was looking out my window when we started the hour, and there were the geoengineered trails all in the sky, and now the sky is all cloudy with those kind of fake-looking clouds that are up there,
Yeah.
This is a worldwide project.
Avio Cirrus. They're a cirrus cloud produced by aviation exhaust. And probably there's some some other things in there too. But, today I'm watching the contrails on planes, and they're pretty short and normal here, and they aren't persisting. So that's what I'm seeing. I'm watching an airplane right now, and it has a normal length contrail, and it is evaporating right behind the plane. So, good. Maybe it's because the temperature's a little warmer or something. But, yeah, I encourage everybody to go to Wikipedia and check out their article on contrails. It's very rewarding reading, to try to understand what exactly is this. And yes, a contrail, a perfectly natural diesel contrail, which is what a regular airplane exhaust is. They burn kerosene. So it's what it is.
Well, I'd recommend people go to geoengineeringwatch.org, go to Dane Wigington's website and really learn about. He has a lot of free information that people can have. And as long as you get it out, he'll send it to you. This is a thing. Just like I wish
I could get him as an interviewee.
Well, he's on our radio station, and he's quite busy, but reach out to him. I bet you he would be willing to speak with you. He's a pretty awesome human being. I mean, the thing is, he's given up a lot. He lives right down here in Shasta, and he's really committed to making this work, to helping us live the best life. And like us, we're committed to helping people live the best life that they can. And I think that that's what really matters, is if we have the right intention. I believe that maybe we can turn the tide. I don't know if we can actually save our planet, but in the meantime, at least we don't have to feel like victims. Take the victimhood out of it. We're responsible for our lives 100%.
Exactly. And I've kind of been pointing that out all along here, is that it's humanity. We are driving it all. And we could make the conscious decisions to drive it in a different direction.
Yeah.
Whether we're being tricked or not. And I guess our job is to
not be tricked.
Untrickify people. Get it in there, get the truth into their heads.
Yeah, untrickify. I like that word. So they can make
conscious decisions in the right directions.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it's been really great. This has been a very interesting year. I think that a lot of people are moving into 2018 feeling very determined that we are going to move our country right in the right place and keep our planet from self-destruction. So I think that's at least the right attitude.
Exactly. And I couldn't agree with you more, Lonnie.
I'm going to be live on Monday, on January 1st.
Be the purveyor of hope.
Yeah, well, we have to be the purveyors of hope.
That's why I do call myself the sane environmentalist, because I don't want to be a purveyor only of doom and gloom. I want to be a purveyor of hopefulness as well. Not only to point things out to people and dispel the myths in their minds, also to offer them some viable alternative.
Mm-hmm. A way to hang on. A way to hang on to an idea that life is still, we're living to live. Even if it's really doom and happy face, life is worth living every single day. That's the issue, is we need to embrace our lives with a sense of urgency and a sense of long-termness, that we can really overcome this. We have about 20 seconds left, Jerome. We have about 20 seconds.
Excellent. So you can find Lonnie's YouTube at Nuts for Art, and my YouTube is The Sane Environmentalist. Please check us both out, like and subscribe, and also take a minute and give UCY.TV a couple bucks if you can today.
Amen. Perfect.
Have a good day.
Bye, Jerome. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, see you later.